Good evening. My name is Teresa Diamond, and along with my colleague Greg Goodall, we represent the percussion department here at UCLA. I'm so happy to see you here in the auditorium tonight. I'm happy to know that people are out there streaming, watching us this evening. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to give you a little information about the first piece we're going to play for you this evening. It's a piece called Streamline by Koshinski, and it's an ethno-music ensemble in that it uses traditional ethnic instruments, not really traditional percussion or classical percussion instruments as we are used to them. This ensemble is a little bit of a mess, actually. The composer, Koshinski, combines Asian and South American instruments and African instruments all together. And so it's if you are a purist, I think you would find it a little bit offsetting, but I think it works very well. At the beginning, he has everyone playing in sort of a Chinese opera style. And so whether you're playing an African instrument like the dun-dun, or you're playing bongos or congas, you're playing in an Asian style. When it gets to the middle section, it becomes an African, Afro-Cuban groove, and so the Asian instruments just have to get in line and groove like the Afro-Cubans for a little bit, and then it returns back to the Asian sort of Chinese opera theme at the end. I hope you enjoy it. It's very fanfare-like, very loud, very festive. This is Koshinski's Streamline. I forgot to mention that it's going to be conducted by one of our grad students, Kevin Needham. Thank you. while they clear the stage, I'll tell you a little bit about the next piece you're going to hear. The next piece is a movement from a 10-movement work called Àguas de Amazônias by Philip Glass. This is the second movement, and it's called Madeira River. The piece began as a piano solo when Philip Glass first wrote it. After he wrote it, a group from Brazil approached him, a group of musicians who played on found instruments. They would make all their own instruments, not ethnic instruments per se, but things that they made to play, like Lou Harrison's Ensemble, kind of. And that group was called Wakti. And they wanted to have the piece written for them and their found instruments, which is kind of unusual, because how many performances are you going to get of this thing if only one group in the world has what you need to play the piece? It's kind of an unusual request. But anyway, they wanted it written as a ballet for them to perform with a dance troupe, and he thought that was a great idea. So he took that 10-movement work and he arranged it for found instruments. You can find the recording online. It's very interesting and fun. Then, during COVID, South Coast Percussion, which is a group that comes out of Chicago that is a percussion ensemble, decided that they had nothing to do during COVID and that they were going to arrange some of these pieces for percussion ensemble. So they got Philip Glass's blessing and arranged 4 of the 10 pieces for percussion ensemble. Remarkably, Philip Glass has not ever written a percussion ensemble piece. He is well known for minimalism. It works great on percussion. Steve Reich and Terry Riley and some of the others have written for percussion ensemble. Philip Glass has not. So they have now, the South Coast Percussion Ensemble has now commissioned a work that he is to write for them that they are supposed to premiere. However, Mr. Glass, I believe, is 88 years old. So we're hoping he has the energy to get a piece out for them, because it would be lovely to have something in our oeuvre. Anyway, the work Madeira River is about one of the tributaries of the Amazon. All the other movements in the work are about rivers. The piece calls for some interesting instrumentation. It calls for tuned cowbells, it calls for a keyboard, electronic keyboard, and marimba and vibes. Quite a very different mood from our first piece. I hope you enjoy it. The next piece that we are going to play is a piece by a Japanese composer, Minoru Miki, called Marimba Spiritual. If you happen to be a Netflix subscriber, you might have seen in the last month or so a documentary called The Greatest Night in Pop, which is about recording We Are the World, which was a song that 24 pop stars, including Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie, and I don't know who else, but there were 24 of the biggest pop stars in the 1980s together in one room. They wrote, Michael Jackson, I believe, wrote it, and sung this song to raise money for famine in Ethiopia in the mid-1980s. During that time, a young woman in Japan, Keiko Abe, was inspired to commission a piece from Mr. Miki, and he thought, I'm going to write a piece in honor of the victims of the famine in Ethiopia. So many people are not aware that Marimba Spiritual, which is one of our great pieces that we have to learn as aspiring percussionists, a beautiful marimba solo, is really a piece about famine. It's sort of a requiem for the dead. And yet it has quite an uplifting tone about it. It's in two parts, and the first part is mostly marimba solo with a little bit of accompaniment from the ensemble. And then the last part of the ensemble is very taiko-like, very taiko drummer-like, with the marimba solo out front, very fast and furious. As I was doing a little research on Mr. Miki and on the piece, I thought it was very funny. A lot of people have done dissertations on this piece and talked about the form of the piece and how it's written, and maybe he used numbers or astrology to put it together and all these things and have all these theories. And Mr. Miki just says, nope, it came into my head, I wrote it down. So he doesn't have any particular formal structure or way he thought about composing this piece. I will say, and he was a young man who grew up in Fukushima, Japan, and until he went to high school, he really had no classical music training. Until he got into college, he really had no classical music training. He mostly was trained on ethnic instruments. So you hear a bit of that ethnic blend with the classical traditional instruments in this piece. The marimba part obviously being part of our classical tradition, and then we have all sorts of taiko drums and gongs and things accompanying the marimba. I will tell you also that this piece is so popular that there is actually a marching band arrangement of it that kind of blows my mind, that people are so enamored of it that they would want to copy it in marching band. Not exactly the medium that I would have picked, but hey, whatever floats your boat. So we are going to feature one of our seniors. Her name is Erica Ho on marimba. Yes, I agree with you. And she will be playing this again on her recital in early May. I believe it's May 2nd. So we're going to get a test drive this evening with Marimba Spiritual by Minoru Miki. Welcome back. The next piece we're going to play is a piece by Shostakovich, a Russian composer from the early 20th century. We're going to play the intermezzo from Die Nase, which translates to The Nose. I have always wanted to play this piece at LA Opera. I've been a member of the opera orchestra for almost 40 years now, and we have yet to do, the orchestra has yet to play a Shostakovich opera. We have presented them, but we have not played them ourselves. The Nose is a crazy opera, and I want to read you the synopsis, and you'll know why we've never done it. It's based on a short story by the absurdist author Gogol, and it starts with a prequel where one of the characters, the main character, is getting a haircut, and that is the prologue. After the prologue, we see Kovalov, I'm going to say the names terribly, eating breakfast, and to his surprise, he finds a nose in his breakfast, but manages, not without difficulty, to dispose of it in the river. It is his own nose, you know, the barber kind of slipped and cut his nose, and it fell into his sandwich. Meanwhile, the main character has discovered that he has lost his nose after he's gotten rid of it. He tracks the nose down to the Kazan Cathedral, where it appears dressed as a state counselor. Act 2. Kovalov tries to report the loss to the police and to place a newspaper advertisement to get the nose back. Number 3, Act 3. Eventually the nose is apprehended trying to board the Riga coach, and the police inspector returns it to Kovalov. But the doctor is unable to attach it. Kovalov writes to Madame Podochina, accusing her of masterminding the lack of his nose to blackmail him into marrying her daughter. Everyone, because of course you want your son-in-law to not have a nose. Everyone discusses the rumors about Kovalov's nose walking the streets. Epilogue. The nose suddenly reappears in its rightful place. The delighted Kovalov is again able to hold his head up high in St. Petersburg. Beyond the fact that some poor tenor is going to have to sing in a nose costume all night, it requires 71 individual singers of various voice types. So I'm pretty sure we're never ever going to get to do it. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to play the Intermezzo from Act 2 for you, which is one of the very first pieces written for only percussion, 10 players in an opera. In this particular scene, what you are hearing and seeing are the police running around and Kovalov running around chasing the nose around the streets of St. Petersburg. Thank you. The next piece on the program is called Radioactive Octopus by Simpson. Kind of an odd turn of the phrase. Throughout history, music has been a way of dealing with societal issues, a way of drawing attention to difficult topics, difficult things. All the way back to the medieval era, musicians, poets would follow people into a battle to be sort of journalists of their day and take down what happened and bring it back to kingdoms, because we didn't have communication systems like we have now, so that was the way history was recorded. So from forever, music has been a way of hearing about things that might be difficult topics. This piece is actually about the nuclear accident at Fukushima, which happened exactly on this day in 2011. That was just a weird accident that I programmed this piece for the anniversary of this accident. What happened was about at 2 o'clock in the afternoon outside of Fukushima, under the ocean, out in the ocean, there was a 9.0 earthquake, a magnificently large earthquake. 50 minutes later, a tsunami happened, and I have the stats here. The tsunami hit heights of 133 feet and traveled at a velocity of 435 miles per hour up to 6 miles inland from where it hit the beach. Now, I know we all drive the LA freeways, but 435 miles per hour is fast, right? What is really remarkable about it is there was a full meltdown of this nuclear reactor, because what happened is the ocean, the earthquake knocked out all the backup systems to this nuclear plant. And, well, there was nobody. Everybody had been washed away or involved in the earthquake or whatever. So the disaster level was a 7. The scale goes to 7. So a remarkable event. Many people died not of radiation, but of the effects of the tsunami, the effects of the effects of the earthquake. Tens of thousands of people died. It was a terrible, horrific event. One of the things that's remarkable about it is it will take 100 years for the effects of this to wear off in this area of Japan. I know we're all aware of Chernobyl. Chernobyl will take 10,000 years for the effects to wear off around it. So it was not as bad as Chernobyl, but certainly a horrific event. This piece, Radioactive Octopus, is about the oceans trying to heal from this event. It's a remarkable piece, not even knowing what it's about, but just listening to it for its form, its structure, its melodies, its harmonies. It's a remarkable piece. As you might imagine, it's a little crunchy, it's a little abstract, it's a little interesting to listen to because it deals with what might be a strident topic, a topic that's hard to think about, hard to face in our society, but that's what we do with music. We make ourselves challenged and challenged to listen to and think about hard things. It looks like they're all set up. I hope you enjoy the piece. It's one of my favorites. I love it. Think about it as a wonderful musical event. It is a bit abstract, but I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you. we have one more piece to play for you. The piece is Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin. This piece has quite an interesting history. This year is its centenary. It got premiered in February of 1924 in New York at on a Tuesday in the afternoon on an educational concert that was about experimental music in America. And pretty much everything's been said and written about this piece, I think, but there are some interesting anecdotes. There are two versions of the commission and the anecdote about the commission. The first is that George was approached by Paul Whiteman of the Paul Whiteman Band to write this piece, and he said no. And Mr. Whiteman went ahead and advertised a concert with George Gershwin having a premiere piece on it. And one day his brother came home and said, "Hey, I thought you turned that thing down." And he said, "Huh." And so he felt like he had to write it because his name was on the program and Paul Whiteman kind of forced him in it. The second anecdote is a little different, and it is that he did agree to write it, but then forgot about it until Ira came home with an advertisement that said, "A new work by George Gershwin." And then he thought, I wonder if I have time to do that. So apparently the piece was started 5 weeks before it was supposed to premiere. Which story is true? I don't know. But it was hastily put together. I understand that Ferdy Grofé, the person who orchestrated it, only had it done about 4 days before the initial performance. So it was a rush job to say the least, and he didn't really apparently think much of this commission, but it has come to be one of his most famous pieces and the piece that's requested all the time. A couple of things you may not know about this piece. George Gershwin wanted to name it American Rhapsody, but his brother Ira went to an exhibit of paintings by James Whistler where all of the paintings were named after colors. So he suggested Rhapsody in Blue, having gone to this James Whistler exhibit. I thought that was interesting. In the review of the piece, it was reported that the audience consisted of, and I quote, "vaudevillians, concert managers come to have a look at the novelty, tin pan Allyites, composers, symphony and opera stars, flappers, cake eaters, all mixed up higgledy-piggledy." That's an interesting description of an audience. The famous clarinet glissando at the beginning of the piece was not George Gershwin's idea. As a joke, Ross Gorman, Whiteman's clarinetist, decided to smear it all up to make it sound jazzier, and George thought, "Yeah, that's good, let's do that." So the most famous thing about the piece was actually sort of improvised by one of the musicians in the Whiteman Band. And George did tell him to make it wail as much as possible. I will tell you that I have a little bit of a connection to this piece because I played in the 1984 Summer Olympics. If nobody's old enough here but me to remember the '84 Olympics, but there was a 100 piano players playing Rhapsody in Blue, and they were right behind me on the peristyle entrance. I was playing timpani about 30 feet in front of them with 20 of my best friends. Each of us had a set of timpani up on the peristyle entrance at the Coliseum. So there's a wide and varied history for this piece. I will tell you that it is almost unnerving to hear it played by all percussion instruments. I give you permission, if you want to chuckle quietly in your chair, you are welcome to do so. It is a little unnerving when you've heard it either played by orchestra or jazz band in the past, but I think it's wild, and I knew we had to do it. We've been having so much fun putting it together. I think you will really enjoy it. Hopefully, I'm hearing the rustling settling down a little bit behind me. When we're done, there is a little reception over in the green room, which is just to my left here of the auditorium. I have snacks that have not been touched by human hands and have absolutely no nutritional value. If you find that appealing, please come over and congratulate our performers on all that they've accomplished this quarter and come say hello. We love that you came out to hear us tonight. Thank you so much.